Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan.
And Ian Coyote.
So we've not done this before, so this should be entertaining for both of us as well as for you. You asked us to do a video about the pagan perspective on working with demons, yes or no, and we have been consistently no. We don't think it's particularly a good idea. Um,
That doesn't mean it's unfeasible, but unless you need to access that hierarchy for some specific reason, I did once because somebody was worshiping one of the demons, um, and I needed to go have a talk with that demon. But other than that, other hierarchies can do as much, and they won't. They're not as dangerous to work with.
and one of the reasons, like, neither one of us are Christian, so we're not working with the Christian mythology base pantheon kind of thing. I mean, there's so many different mythologies out there to work with. And the question was, why not from a pagan perspective? So if I look at all the different potential beings that are out there that I might be able to interact with, and I have my choice of any or all of them, um, I'm not inclined to pick one that historically has been um, maybe hard to work with or has sort of a darker take on things. Not that we're worried about the dark or the power of the dark.
No, which was my point when I said I visited that demon once because of that. If you do everything respectfully and well, you don't have to be afraid of them, but you have to do it respectfully and well, which means according to all the magical rules and things to keep yourself out of trouble.
And if you don't have natural authority, you really don't want to even start down that path because natural authority is probably the strongest tool that you have in order to make sure that things happen according to your desire. So so if that's the case, if we don't work with demons and we just aren't interested for various reasons, what do we work with, right? Because there's certainly plenty of other beings and spirits out there. And of course, Barden's second book on evocation is a great source for finding other beings that have their own job and have something that you might be able to do. So we thought we'd share a few of those with you.
Yeah, real quick, just if you're just starting, you probably don't want to be working with beings go through Barden's first book. But if you have the skills and the capabilities of doing this, then you can. Go on. Sorry, that was it.
Well, I'm just looking to see. Of course, this is hard on my eyes, but so there's like what 300
That's only the zone girdling the earth.
and
Yes,
that's
there's
just
like
the zone.
380.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. Let's say number 3 is Kolaram, and that's the representatives and his first subjects of the head of the guy, Ashamunade, Munadai, or something like that. So the first ones are like the rulers of the zone. Okay, we should start with number 1 then,
Sure, and then
just
show him his
because.
seal because he's got the colorful seal.
Right. So Ashmunadai is a powerful initiate in the zone girdling the earth. He has the rank of an absolute monarch. His universal seal, as shown in the picture, is very complicated, but is a graphical representation of all the fundamental qualities with which this high intelligence is equipped with regard to the zone girdling the earth and also with regard to our physical world. For the first evocation, the seal has to be drawn in blue, red, green, and yellow colors and has to be placed into the triangle outside the magic circle in front of the magician as soon as he has been able to contact Ashmunan Ashmunadai. He will get from him an abbreviated sign by the help of which the magician will be able to call the intelligence. The simplified sign of Ashmunadai's seal must not be used unless approved by the being. So Ashmunadai can make the magician acquainted with all laws governing the mental and astral sphere of the zone girdling the earth and enable him to apply these laws. With Ashmunadai's help, the magician can get under his control the total zone girdling the earth and gain plenty of knowledge. Since Ashmunadai is in possession of a great number of servants, he can place at the magician's disposal, if asked by him, servants who will assist him either in the zone girdling the earth or in our physical world and do everything he wants. And so his seal is in the back. Okay, so let's see if this is going to show up. There it is. Yeah, you can see it's extremely complicated. It has lots of colors. You won't be able to draw it from seeing this here. But it sort of gives you an idea. One of the things that's great about this book is that all of the seals have got, all the spirits have got their own personal seals and so forth. So you can look them up once you get their number 132, for example. His name is Sekesti, instructs the magician in respect of the most subtle analogies and secrets of the evolution of the microcosm and macrocosm. From Sekesti, the magician learns to know, at least from this intelligence's point of view, about the act of creation of everything as divine providence purports it. You want to look at one and read it?
Well, yeah, I was thinking get one that's more associated with ordinary or more
mundane things.
Mundane things, yeah. Figure 280, Mesa is the originator of all customs and rites of all people all over the world, especially those concerning wooing, lovemaking, and marriage. Another one quickly is Echaji, again, we'll have to figure out how to pronounce it, but gives help and advice in the case of malicious diseases like epilepsy, cancer, diseases of the spinal cord, St. Vitus's dance, and which are still regarded as incurable. He lets the magician recognize the causes of severe and hidden diseases and entrusts him with the method for the production of appropriate means to cure them. So a lot of these are very practical.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that with the descriptions that Barton gives for the beings, not only do you have the seal for the spirit so that you can work with it, the name of the spirit, the description of the spirit's job, you also get hints as to whether or not it's a good idea to work with them and whether karma might become a factor. Like there's some of them you might not want to work with, especially in the beginning, because if you ask them to do something for you, you might be making an unconscious contract with the being in order, for them to do a job, as it were. But there's a bunch of them in here that one that we worked with in particular that basically won't do anything that would be bad for your karma, so that you don't have to worry about the consequences of working with the being.
And actually there are a few of them like that. That's the thing with working with positive beings. They're likely to warn you. First off, they're not likely to do negative things, and then they're likely to warn you if something you're going to do have negative results.
Now here's another one. Noga, fertility and the power of propagation of men and women come under the power of this head. He controls by his vibrations the sexual sphere of both man and woman and decides on the ability for life in the seed. So if somebody's having difficulty with fertility issues, this would be the right being in order to connect with, to see if there's something that can be done. And the magician may be informed by Noga how to maintain his sexual faculties up to a great age, and furthermore, how sterility and impotence in respect of woman and man can be treated successfully. The magician can get a wealth of additional information on this field from this head. So each one of them is a very specific field of knowledge and information and influence that they have. And when you're looking at like the demons that are talked about in the Goetta and so forth, they're more like the heads, and their descriptions are very broad, so you don't necessarily know for sure exactly what you're getting.
Also not so accurate. So there was the one that I visited the one time, okay, is normally described as having an obnoxious breath. So obnoxious you like have to watch out, it'll kill you with it or something. Um, what I found was not the case. The demon had a shield protecting him, which was spinning and whirling like of rocks and dirt. And I assume it started out with like something like watch out for his obnoxious wind or something, and then got turned into breath. At any rate, you can't trust the descriptions completely. Uh, I didn't see this being, but he showed me his seal, telling me it was him within this whirling cloud of debris. So you have to watch out for the old descriptions and things because they're usually wandered off from whatever the true description was originally.
Which I think is true from a lot of the magical stuff, like with the Fae and so forth, and the stories that people have told about them. The other reason for not working with them, is because the pantheon that they come from, that they're associated with, they're the enemy of the other side kind of thing. And I don't really subscribe to the whole battle of good versus evil to start with.
Right, me neither. And yeah, it's calling them negative beings, or even that can be misleading. Beings that perform negative functions that are necessary for the world to continue is a much better description, and demons just throws too much stuff into the mix that isn't really accurate.
Well, like the guy that's in charge of earthquakes, and you know, earthquakes are considered bad by people
Yeah.
of in general, because unless they're happening to an enemy, I guess then they might consider them good, which is sort of what the idea of working with that one is that you can like
Yeah,
send
and
it.
there are some of the goetic ones like that. It's supposed to be able to give great hail and earthquakes and just really,
Right,
but who wants to do that anyway?
not us. And it's just not interesting to us. I find these things a lot more interesting because it gives me a much a more complete compendium from which to work, and one that's not as sort of structured by religious prejudice and perception of what these things are supposed to be. So it's more it's more informative. There's informational and more accurate and more useful, since it includes the seals of all of these beings as well as their name and their function. And so it's a lot more flexible.
Yeah,
And
for
that's the
sure,
reason
and a
why.
lot safer for people who are still beginners to work with.
Well, the fact that when we were trying to find, you were trying to find a being to work with your sister and her mental health aspects, you consider the number of these beings, and Ian started to connect with one at a time, and each one he asked if it could help his sister. It said no, but try this guy, and gave Ian the name and the seal for the next one, and then he could look him up and verify that that indeed was the being, that was a real being, and then connect with that one
Yeah,
and move
until I
on.
got one that said it could help.
That was the Mercury being.
Yeah.
And so, if we assume that these things are real, that's the other thing. A lot of people don't have a problem working with demons because they assume that they aren't real. And I come from a place that they are real, that they're real beings, real forces, that they aren't just external reflections of internal landscapes inside my mind. They're not projections from the human unconscious into the world of spirit beings and so forth. Some of them
Right,
possibly
which,
could have been
yeah,
influenced by that.
well, and if you need to watch out because that's one of the hazards of doing an evocation in the method of the standard Western Hermetic, is that by not fulfilling all the conditions, it's really easy to accidentally exteriorize a larva or a larval being, something like that, and think it's the being you're trying to evoke if you don't have enough clairvoyance to tell the difference. You can actually materialize down something which is not the being, but entirely a construct of your own imagination if you get wound up to the point where that becomes capable.
And if you're already inclined to think that that's the case, you're much more likely to actually do that.
Yes, but the
because
real,
you're feeding the whole notion that this is a projection.
yeah, the real beings are outside of you, and they will tell you things you don't know. And I mean, that's hard to argue with when you get told things you don't know, and then you check on them, and they are correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, so like the vast amount of potential information and interaction with different types of beings, gods and goddesses and cultures and all this other stuff and nature spirits, it's as complex and as many as the number of people and animals and plants and birds in the world. I mean,
And Barton's book covers all the spheres. It has, not only does it have like 380, some I think of the zone girdling the earth that are actually in control of things.
there's a 72 Mercury spirits.
Well, yeah, there's the 300 and 384. So the Earth zone alone gives you 384. Then you get to the moon sphere, of course, and you've got, oh, let's see how many. You've got about 28 listed in the moon sphere, 72 listed in the Mercury zone, and so on and so forth. So depending on where you go, they get, there's a lot of beings in here. I thought it might be interesting to show somebody some of the lunar, some of the Mercury ones. The Mercury ones are all like this, but the lunar ones are interesting because they're all like little pictures. So I just thought people might find that interesting as some of the lunar ones, the seals.
Here we go. I'd like to see the colorful ones too.
Yeah, the Mercury zone ones are colorful. In general, they're red and purple.
Trying to figure out which way I go.
And the other thing is,
each one of these is different. They all have very specific designs and so forth. And that's one of the things that's fascinating about it too. Is sometimes you can look at one of these and kind of get an idea.
right, that was a kind of interesting one.
Sort of like the tower.
Yep.
Got
with a sickle on it. Yep.
Yeah. And
well, and all their seals and things are relate directly to their powers and abilities. If you could understand the seal, you'd know everything a being could do.
this I think is a Jupiter sphere.
Yes, Jupiter. That would be Jupiter.
So like some of these things are pretty spectacular and very complicated, as you can see. And learning how to like draw the pictures and accurately and so forth. Like these guys here, there's two different Jupiter spirits.
And one of the things you have to think about also with this is Barden has personally visited each of those spirits. He's personally got the information from them, and he's done it himself, and he can verify he's not just doing this from a collection of stuff. And everything I've seen in the old grimoires, the descriptions are very mediocre, and the descriptions of ways to get in contact with the beings are very substandard as far as getting good results.
Well, kind of like, not enough depth and information.
Yeah, and Barden gives you the whole deal, and he tells you exactly what you need to be able to do it, how to do the evocations.
The name of this book is covered up by black tape.
That's because it's so old.
Yes, this is the practice of magical evocation and instructions for invoking spirit beings from the spheres surrounding us. So it is definitely a good source of material to have for your library, even if you decide that this is too advanced for you to do right now.
Yes, it's much better than just sticking with the 72 demons of the Goetta, which I don't recommend working with anyway, because they are the negative beings. But yeah, there's so many more available, especially Barton's book lists so many of them, and they're all helpful or positive in some nature. So
yeah, and if we look at the whole process of magic, the idea that the energy that you put out becomes a magnet for things to be attracted to you. So if you're working almost exclusively with negative beings that have that kind of aura around them, then what you're going to attract to yourself are going to be negative experiences. Or at least that's going to be your focus. And
well, and that's what'll happen. The more comfortable you get with negative beings, the easier it is to get a hold of them, the easier they will have getting a hold of you also. It basically will increase a bunch of traits in you generally that are not positive. And if you want to take an example of a modern practicing magician who does evocations and things, he's had some interesting kind of disastrous moments with the demons from the Goetta, including one where he, if you don't know what abramelin oil is, imagine extremely strong cinnamon oil with two other very spicy, strong ingredients with it, getting that in your eyes. For example, when he did an evocation, I believe, of Orobus, which is a large horse, he ended up getting it all in his eyes and literally thinking he was actually going to go blind from it because it was burning so badly and everything. The stuff is really potent. So that's the type of stuff you can avoid by, following Barden and doing it all right, properly, and with the proper beings.
yeah, and it's like it's not the major focus of most of our work. It's
No,
like
it's not.
it's like if we need assistance, we're not doing like what Barton did and getting in touch with every one of them and saying, hey, I just wanted to check in and say, hey, but as needed. And so
It's always good to have friends on the other planes too, by the
yes,
way.
having friends on the other planes and different spheres and so forth is very helpful if a crisis comes around.
And frankly, having a positive being as my friend seems better than having a negative being as my energy or as my enemy, because the usual way they're evoked is like with a point of a sword, and if you do anything wrong, I'll burn your seal and burn your sigil and destroy you by destroying your sigil, and
Yeah, that's the
lots of
old-fashioned grimoires
yes.
from the
And
Middle
well,
Ages.
but like that's too, as he states in his own books. I'm saying this from reading his material, not from anything else. uh,
And that always has seemed like a bad idea to me as an empath.
I
And I
agree.
put myself in the position of a spirit
I
being
agree.
who's being forced to come to a plane that he's not comfortable in to start with and doesn't maybe even like very much, and then being like, examined
Yeah.
and poked at and threatened and so forth. And from my own personal experience, if someone did that to me, first chance I got, I'd whack the
Yeah. And
daylights out of that
nothing.
person.
Nothing. I do not mean to be disrespectful to Miss, who is a very respectable magician and has earned his laurels, as you put it, in doing things. It's just that I think this is a better way to do it. It's not about, but so much about the standard Western Hermetic approach that I disagree with. So, an excellent source, if that's what you're looking for, is the Western Hermetic magic, Enochian magic, that kind of thing. But again, not our focus specifically.
So I think that's about all we have to say on a spontaneous video of the subject. This is our first one combined together, which is kind of
I didn't
entertaining.
want to make anybody think I was saying anything negative about. Met him a couple times, shook his hand. He seems like a really nice guy, a really fun guy. So, no disrespect intended. This is just different information than he's working on or working from.
Yeah.
There, that's what I wanted to say.
Anywho, all right. So as usual, please send us emails, questions at Siofrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. And you can always send me a friend's request on Facebook under Siofra Bradigan, and we can have conversations. If you want to support the work that we do, you can become a patron on Patreon, or you can go to our Etsy page and buy Ian's wonderful picture that he painted, or our new t-shirts, which is, again, Siofra's Magic Alcove. I tried to make it consistent so it'd be easier for me to remember. So, this is Siofra Bradigan.
And Ian Coyote saying good night, or good day, or
and blessed be.
good morning, whatever time it is where you're at.
And blessed be.
And blessed be.